The results of the DNA test won't be available for at least another day. For Emily, this one day has been unbearably agonizing. She couldn't sit still. Several times she was on the verge of bursting into my room and demanding to know exactly what I found out. But she didn't dare. That's because Victoria had left me in the main mansion. I hadn't returned to that gloomy servants' quarter. Instead, Victoria had arranged for a maid to temporarily take care of me, letting me stay in the guest room on the first floor. Although it still wasn't as good as living with Katie, for me, it was already a world of difference. There was a soft bed, clean clothes, and 3 meals a day delivered to my room on time. The food was simple, but it was always hot. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, because I knew all of this was only temporary. Until the results came out, I couldn't afford to let my guard down. Since Emily couldn't find an opportunity to harm me directly, she took out her frustration on Katie instead. Katie threw a tantrum all morning because her mom wouldn't help her grab the candy. She refused to eat or drink, and started tossing things around randomly in her room. For the first time, Victoria didn't give in to her whims. She simply let Katie cry and make a fuss in her room. Emily felt deeply sorry for her daughter but dared not intervene to persuade Victoria. So she secretly slipped snacks to Katie instead, but Victoria caught her red-handed. "Emily," Victoria said coldly, "didn't I tell you? If she doesn't eat, then let her go hungry. Spoiling her like this will only turn her into a spoiled and willful young lady." Emily was so frightened that she immediately dropped to her knees. "Madam, I'm wrong. I just felt so sorry for the young lady." "Is she a young lady, or your own daughter?" With a single remark, Victoria silenced Emily completely. Emily's face turned pale, then green, then pale again. She didn't dare say another word. Victoria looked at her, her eyes filled with disappointment. "You go ahead and head down first. I'd like to be alone for a bit." This was the first time the Howard family had experienced such a direct clash over a child's issue. All the servants were watching it unfold. They began whispering among themselves, discussing how I, the suddenly favored illegitimate daughter, had come to be so warmly received, while Katie was falling from grace. They even talked about the housekeeper, Emily, whose face was growing increasingly grim. The winds were quietly shifting. And yet, I, at the very center of it all, remained unnaturally calm. Most of the time, I stayed locked in my room. I didn't cry, I didn't throw tantrums, and I didn't run around wildly. I ate whatever was offered to me, and did exactly as I was told. I behaved so obediently, it was as if I were a wooden doll. Only when no one was around would a cold glint, utterly uncharacteristic of my age, flash briefly in my eyes. I'm waiting for an opportunity, a chance that will send Emily plummeting into utter ruin, beyond redemption. As evening fell, the opportunity finally arrived. Emily used the excuse of cleaning to slip into my room. She sent the other servants away and then locked the door from the inside. I knew she couldn't hold herself back any longer. "Speak," she whispered, her voice low yet laced with a madness that couldn't be suppressed. "What exactly did you tell Mr. and Mrs. Howard?" I sat on the edge of the bed, swinging my little short legs, staring at her innocently. "I didn't say a thing." "You dare to play dumb?" She lunged forward, grabbing me by the throat. "You little bastard, do you think you're going to destroy me? Do you really think that now you've climbed to the top, you've become a phoenix? Let me tell you, as long as I'm alive, you'll never get away with it." Her fingers tightened around my neck. I began to struggle for breath, my little face turning bright red. But I didn't struggle. I just looked at her, and slowly, from my pocket, I pulled out something. It was a tiny, red button. At the sight of that button, Emily's pupils suddenly contracted. The hand she'd been clutching around my neck instinctively loosened. How did this thing end up in your possession?" Her voice was filled with shock and fear. I gasped for air, coughing a few times. Then, I held up the button and placed it right in front of her eyes. This fell off the bad guy in the black clothes," I said clearly, every word deliberate and precise. Emily's body gave a slight tremor. She recognized this button. It belonged to her younger brother, Jack. Jack was a compulsive gambler with a long criminal record. 3 years ago, it was she who had asked Jack to help her, without anyone noticing, to swap 2 children secretly at the hospital. The night before last, she got drunk and called Jack again, bragging to him about how well her daughter was doing at the Howard's place. Over the phone, she recounted everything, every single detail. she thought she was making the call from the maid's room, completely unnoticed and undetected. But little did she know that right there, in the corner by the wall, hidden in a mouse hole, were a pair of ears that belonged to me. And this button, I found it yesterday under the bed in the maid's room. It must have been dropped accidentally when Jack came to ask her for money in the past. I picked it up right then and there. I knew that this little thing would turn out to be the deadliest weapon at the crucial moment. And now, the crucial moment has arrived. You're saying, you found it on the black-clad man? Emily's voice was trembling uncontrollably. I nodded. That night, he carried me over to Mrs. Bed, and I got scared, so I grabbed him. Then, this thing just fell right down. Emily, tell me, what if I gave this to Mr. Howard? Would Mr. Howard be able to track down that bad guy then? I tilted my head and smiled innocently, but in Emily's eyes, my smile was scarier than the devil himself. She knew, I'd figured it all out. This 3-year-old wasn't some clueless fool at all. She was a venomous snake lurking in the shadows, ready at any moment to strike a fatal blow. No! I can't give this to Mr. Howard, she murmured softly, her eyes filled with utter despair. She knew, once William Howard found out about Jack, everything would be over. She'd end up in prison, her daughter would fall from heaven straight into hell. No, she couldn't let that happen. A mad thought began to take root in her mind. She looked at me, and for the first time, her eyes revealed a murderous intent. As long as this little bitch is dead, no one will ever know this secret. It'll all be over once and for all. Emily's gaze had changed. Now it was like that of a snake poisoned to the core. The air in the room seemed to freeze instantly. I knew she meant to kill me. It was something I'd expected all along, that a person capable of swapping another child for her own daughter had long since lost all humanity. I didn't show any fear. I just kept staring at her quietly, slipping the button back into my pocket without a sound. My calm demeanor only made the murderous intent in Emily's eyes grow even fiercer. You little devil, she hissed through clenched teeth, I should never have let you live in the first place. I should have strangled you to death right there in the hospital. She took one step closer to me, then another. Her hands slowly rose, rough and powerful, hands that could end my life at any moment. I didn't back down. I just sat here on the edge of the bed, staring at her face, twisted with jealousy and fear. You've killed me, but you won't get away with it, I said calmly, my voice low yet startlingly clear. The authorities have already started to suspect you. The DNA results will be out tomorrow. If I'm dead, they'll immediately suspect you first. By then, they'll dig even deeper. Your younger brother, the real villain, will be found soon enough. Every word I utter feels like a heavy hammer striking right at Emily's heart. She freezes in her tracks. For a fleeting moment, her eyes betray a flicker of hesitation. Yeah. What good would killing her do? It'd only make things worse. But if I don't kill her, am I just supposed to wait for tomorrow's judgment? Emily is caught in a frantic struggle. Her expression was sometimes grim, sometimes filled with despair. I knew I had to stoke the fire even further. Actually, I said slowly, looking directly at her, there's still one more way you can try. Emily shot up, staring at me intently. What way? Take your daughter and run, I replied. Run right now. The DNA results haven't come back yet. Mr. and Mrs. Howard are only under suspicion for now. If you two just disappear, they'll never be able to find you. Maybe after some time, this whole thing will simply fade away. At least it'd be better than going to prison. My words were like a ray of light shining into her dark, desperate heart. Run? That's right. She could run, take Katie and flee to a place where no one knows them. Although the Howard family wields great power, as long as they hide far enough away, there's bound to be hope. Run, she murmured to herself, her eyes lighting up again with a flicker of hope, but I don't have any money. Over the years, though she'd held a high position in the Howard family, her salary had never been much to speak of. Her younger brother was an endless drain. Every single penny she'd ever earned had gone straight into his pockets. The lady's jewelry box is right there on the dressing table, I reminded her casually. Those things could provide you and your daughter with a lifetime of food and clothing without a care. At that instant, Emily's breathing grew rapid. Steal? In the past, she'd never even dared to think about it, but now, to stay alive, and for her daughter's sake, she simply couldn't afford to be so cautious anymore. Greed had overcome her fear. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions. She didn't understand why I was helping her. "Why are you telling me all this?" she asked. "I don't want you to die here." I looked at her, my gaze sincere. "If you're dead, the police will come." "I hate the police." That reason was both innocent and perfectly reasonable. It's only natural for a 3-year-old child to be afraid of policemen in uniform. Emily believed it, or rather, she had no other choice but to believe. "All right," she bit her lip, making up her mind, "I'll trust you just this once. But you've got to promise me you won't tell anyone before we leave. Otherwise, even if it means I die, I'll drag you down with me." "I promise," I nodded. She gave me one more long, intense look, then, without another hesitation, turned around and opened the door. She didn't head back to her own room. Instead, she walked straight toward the master bedroom on the second floor. I stepped over to the window, watching her figure as she disappeared down the hallway. My lips curled into a cold smile. Would I really help her? How could I possibly do that? All I wanted was for her to bear one more charge before she left, stealing, and a huge sum at that. That way, even if she ran to the ends of the earth, the Howard family would never let her go. I wanted her to spend her entire life living in fear of being hunted down. That was my first real gift to her. I didn't turn her in. I simply quietly returned to bed, lay down, and closed my eyes. I knew this night would surely bring no peace to the Howard household. Emily moved swiftly. Less than half an hour later, I heard the sound of a car starting downstairs. The noise was faint, yet in the dead silence of the night, it rang crystal clear. They were gone, taking with them the stolen jewelry and a life that wasn't theirs. It seemed as though everything had finally come to an end, but for me, everything has just begun. I open my eyes and gaze at the ceiling. I'm not the slightest bit sleepy. I'm waiting for dawn, waiting for that phone call that will decide my fate. Dawn had broken. The first person to notice that Emily and Katie were missing was the maid who was responsible for waking them up. She knocked on the door for a long time, but no one answered. When she pushed the door open, she found the room empty. Every bed was neatly made, as if no one had ever slept there. Panicked, the maid immediately went to report to Victoria. Bursting into the room, Victoria was stunned to see the empty space. She quickly walked over to the dressing table and opened the jewelry box. Inside, it was completely empty. All her favorite jewels, the necklaces, earrings, and rings, were gone. Victoria's body swayed, and she nearly fell. Betrayal, utter, complete betrayal. The person she trusted most not only might have switched her daughter but had also stolen all her jewelry and fled. The blow was devastating for her. Just then, William Howard's phone rang. He stepped aside to answer the phone. After listening for just a few seconds, his expression turned profoundly grave. Hanging up the call, he walked over to Victoria and gently supported her. "The results are in," he said, his voice hoarse and heavy. Victoria raised her head and looked at him, her eyes filled with both fear and anticipation. She didn't dare to ask. She was afraid of hearing the answer she'd already guessed but hadn't dared to believe. "Katie has absolutely no blood relation to us," William said, each word carefully enunciated. Instantly, tears welled up in Victoria's eyes, although she'd had a vague premonition all along. Seeing the truth laid bare before her still sent her spiraling into despair. The daughter she'd raised for 3 years was, it turned out, someone else's child, the child of the very housekeeper she trusted most. What a ridiculous, utterly absurd hoax this was. Then what about Lily? She choked back tears as she asked the most crucial question. William looked at her, his gaze filled with complex emotions. "She's our daughter. Our biological daughter." A deafening explosion seemed to rip through Victoria's mind. All the clues finally came together in that instant. That face so strikingly similar to her own, those eyes identical to hers. Everything suddenly made sense. The child she despised, mocked, and treated like a low-born servant, she was, in fact, the flesh and blood she carried for 10 months, the child she'd fought tooth and nail to bring into the world. And yet, she'd been the one who pushed her away, leaving her to suffer silently right under her very eyes for 3 long years. "My daughter," she murmured softly, her heart torn apart. regret, guilt, and self-reproach surged over her like a tidal wave, engulfing her completely. I'm going to find her. I'm going to find my daughter. She turned abruptly, as if she'd gone mad, and was about to rush out. She's right downstairs, in the guest room. William grabbed her arm. Victoria froze in place. That's right, her daughter was right here, in this very house, but how could she possibly face her? How could she ever bring herself to say, I'm sorry? She didn't have the face to do it. William's expression was even worse than hers. He was the head of the family, yet couldn't even protect his own flesh and blood. A vicious maid had been running rampant in his home for 3 whole years, and that was a disgrace he carried for the rest of his life. Call the police, he said, pulling out his phone, his voice as cold as ice. Seize all of Emily's bank accounts and issue an arrest warrant. She stole my things and swapped my daughter. I'll make sure she spends the rest of her life behind bars. His anger was like a volcanic eruption. The entire Howard family was plunged into an atmosphere of deep gloom. All the servants were so frightened that they didn't dare utter a single word. They finally realized just what earth-shattering event had unfolded within these walls. Meanwhile, I, the very protagonist of this drama, was quietly enjoying breakfast in the guest room. A maid walked in, her eyes filled with both sympathy and awe as she looked at me. Miss, she began hesitantly. This was the first time anyone had ever called me Mississippi. I raised my head and met her gaze, saying nothing. Sir and Madam would like you to come over, she said softly. To the master bedroom. I nodded, set down the glass of milk I'd been holding, wiped my mouth, and jumped off the chair. I knew, the moment for judging Emily had come to an end. Now it was their turn, to face their own reckoning. Step by step, I made my way to the room, the very room where I was supposed to have lived for 3 years. In my heart, there was neither excitement nor joy, there was only a cold, icy calm. I pushed open the door. And there they were, 2 people who looked utterly exhausted and haggard. My biological parents. They stood frozen in the middle of the room, helpless and awkward, like 2 schoolchildren who had done something wrong and were waiting to be punished by their teacher. When they saw me walk in, their bodies stiffened completely. Victoria's eyes were red and puffy. She had clearly been crying. She looked at me, her lips trembling, wanting to say something but unable to speak. William was slightly calmer. He knelt down, trying to meet me, and I leveled. He forced a smile that looked more painful than a frown. Lily, he spoke with difficulty. From today on, you are the young lady of this house. This is your room. Your bed. Daddy. Daddy bought you lots and lots of toys, and beautiful princess dresses. Do you like them? As he spoke, he pointed to the things in the room that had originally belonged to Katie. I looked at him, my face expressionless. Then I stepped past him and walked slowly toward the gilded crib. I reached out and touched the soft blanket on IT. It was comfortable, far more comfortable than the cold floor I had slept on for 3 years. I don't like them. I spoke, my voice not loud, but clear enough for everyone to hear. Their smiles froze on their faces. These things are hers, I said. I don't like using other people's things. They smell like her. It's disgusting. My words cut into their hearts like a knife. Tears streamed down Victoria's face again. I'm sorry, Lily. Mommy's sorry. Mommy will have all these things thrown away right now and replaced with new ones. Okay? She begged me for forgiveness, humbled and desperate. I turned around and looked at her. You are not my mommy. My mommy is Emily. She's a bad woman who hits me, yells at me, and doesn't feed me. And you, I looked at her, you are Katie's mommy. You're the good mommy who holds her, kisses her, and buys her pretty dresses. We have nothing to do with each other. Every word I spoke was calm and cruel. Victoria completely broke down. She covered her face, squatted on the floor, and sobbed uncontrollably. No, no. Lily, I am your mommy. William's heart ached as if pierced by needles. He knew that between us, there was already a deep, unbridgeable gap. A gap they had dug with their own hands. Lily, I know you hate us. He stood up, his voice hoarse. We were wrong. We failed to protect you. But please, give us a chance. A chance to make it up to you. Okay? Make it up to me? I sneered inwardly. Could 3 years of suffering and humiliation be compensated with a few toys and dresses? It was ridiculous. Fine. I nodded. I'll give you a chance. They froze, seemingly shocked that I had agreed so easily. A glimmer of hope appeared on their faces. Then will you do anything for me? I asked. Yes. Of course we will. Victoria nodded quickly. Whatever Lily wants, Mommy will give it to you. Good. I looked at them and spoke slowly, word by word. First thing, I want Emily to stay in prison for the rest of her life, her brother Jack, too. William's eyes sharpened. Don't worry. They won't get away. I've used all my connections. They'll be caught soon and face the harshest punishment under the law. Second thing, I continued, I want Katie sent to an orphanage. She likes taking things that don't belong to her, doesn't she? Then let her go somewhere where everything has to be fought for. Let her taste what it's like to go hungry and be bullied. My words made Victoria's body tremble. As much as she hated Emily, she had still raised Katie for 3 years. Sending a 3-year-old girl to an orphanage, it was cruel. She wanted to beg for mercy, but when she met my cold eyes, she swallowed her words. She had no right to ask. William fell silent for a moment, then he nodded. All right. He agreed. This man was more decisive than I had expected. What's the third thing? He asked. I looked at them and slowly smiled. A cold, eerie smile that did not belong to a 3-year-old child. Third thing, I want you to kneel the way Emily knelt before me, apologize to me. The room fell completely silent. The air seemed to stop moving. William and Victoria both stared in disbelief. They could not believe their ears. Make them kneel to a 3-year-old girl, their own biological daughter? It was unthinkable. Their dignity, their pride, made it impossible for them to accept, but when they looked into my eyes, filled with hatred and coldness, they knew I was not joking. This was my condition. A judgment they had no choice but to accept. William's face turned pale, then green, then pale again. In his entire life, he had only knelt before his parents. He had never suffered such humiliation. Victoria was the same. She had been born privileged and had never bowed to anyone. The atmosphere in the room grew tense. I did not rush them. I just watched quietly, watching the ridiculous struggle and hesitation on their faces. I knew they were weighing their options, weighing whether their dignity was more important than their daughter's heart. In the end, Victoria moved first. She looked at me, her eyes filled with pain and guilt, then slowly, she bent her knees. Thud. She knelt before me. I'm sorry, Lily. Her tears fell onto the expensive carpet. Mommy was wrong. Mommy is so sorry. William stared at his kneeling wife and flinched. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, then he knelt down too. A powerful tycoon, a high society lady. At this moment, both knelt before a 3-year-old child. The scene was absurd, but to me, it was a kind of relief. I looked at them, and the heavy stone that had weighed on my heart for 3 years finally loosened a little. My stung, but I did not cry. I just nodded. I accept your apology, I said. But I will not forgive you, not yet, at least. With that, I turned and walked out of the room that felt suffocating. Behind me, they cried quietly, their voices broken. I knew that from this moment on, my life had changed completely. I was no longer the helpless Lily who could be bullied at will. I was the real young lady of the Howard family. A reborn avenger, forged in hatred and fire. In the days that followed, the Howard household turned upside down. All the furniture, toys, and clothes were replaced with new ones. The entire mansion was redecorated exactly to my liking. William and Victoria obeyed my every wish, giving me whatever I wanted. They tried to make up for their guilt with material things. I did not refuse. All of this should have been mine in the first place. I began to study etiquette, piano, painting, everything a proper wealthy young lady should know. I learned quickly, so quickly that all my tutors were astonished. They did not know that inside my small body lived a mature, tough soul. The fates of Emily and Jack soon arrived. They were caught in a remote town on the 3rd day of their escape. They were found with the stolen jewelry, kidnapping, grand larceny, multiple charges. A long prison sentence awaited them. And Katie was indeed sent to an orphanage. William handled it personally. On the day she left, Victoria cried for an entire day. I did not go to see her oft. I felt no sympathy for that girl. She had enjoyed a life that did not belong to her. Now she was simply going back to where she belonged. Everything seemed to be going exactly as I wanted. I had become the true precious jewel of the Howard family. Everyone envied me. They said I had turned my luck around, that my suffering had finally ended. But only I knew, the scar in my heart had never healed. I still had nightmares, nightmares of that dark, damp little room, nightmares of Emily's twisted face, nightmares of the cold floor and the endless hunger. I could not forget, nor could I truly accept William and Victoria. The nicer they were to me, the more ironic it felt. This kindness should have been mine 3 years ago, not given now as some kind of compensation. Between us, there was an invisible wall. They tried desperately to get close, but I always stood still. That changed on my 5th birthday. My 5th birthday party was extremely grand. William invited almost every famous and wealthy person in the city. He wanted to announce to everyone that I, Lily Howard, was his only true heir. At the party, I wore an expensive princess dress, looking like a real princess. I accepted everyone's blessings and compliments. A polite smile hung on my face, but inside, I felt bored. All the fake pleasantries disgusted me. I made an excuse and slipped quietly into the backyard garden. It was peaceful there. Moonlight shone on the fountain, making the water glisten. I sat on the swing and swayed gently. Then a man in a suit walked over. He looked unfamiliar. "You must be Miss Lily Howard," he smiled. I nodded. "Happy birthday," he said. "My name is Lucas. I'm your father's business partner." "Hello, sir," I replied politely. He knelt down and pulled out a beautiful music box from his pocket. "It's a birthday present for you." I did not take it. Something felt wrong about his eyes. "Thank you, sir, but Daddy said I shouldn't accept gifts from strangers." I refused. His smile froze. "It's fine. Your father won't mind." As he spoke, he forced the music box into my hand, then his hand grabbed my arm. His grip was tight. My heart jolted. "Sir, what are you doing? Don't be afraid. Uncle will show you something much more fun." A strange smile appeared on his face. I immediately realized I was in danger. This man was a kidnapper. I struggled and screamed for help, but his other hand quickly covered my mouth. Then he lifted me and ran toward the dark depths of the garden. I was terrified. For the first time in 2 lives, I felt such intense fear. Just as I thought everything was over, an angry roar exploded from not far away. "Let go of my daughter!" It was William. He and Victoria had noticed I was gone and were frantically searching the garden. Lucas's face paled when he saw them. He had not expected to be found so quickly. He pulled a dagger from his coat and pressed it against my neck. "Don't come any closer," he shouted at William, "or I'll kill her." The sharp blade pressed against my delicate skin. I could feel its icy coldness. William and Victoria froze instantly. Fear and despair covered their faces. "Lucas! Have you lost your mind?" William recognized him. "I know your investments failed and you owe a lot of money, but you can't hurt my daughter. Let her go, and I'll give you whatever money you want." "Too late!" Lucas's eyes were bloodshot. "I've been cornered by the people I owe. Today, either you give me $1 million so I can leave the country, or I'll die with your daughter." He was extremely agitated, his hand shaking as he held the knife. I knew he was not joking. He was truly capable of anything. "Fine. I'll give it to you." William agreed without hesitation. $1 million. "I'll have it ready right away. Don't hurt Lily." "How can I trust you?" Lucas clearly did not believe him. "You go prepare the money. Your wife stays here as a hostage." Victoria did not hesitate for a second. She immediately stepped forward. "No!" William grabbed her arm. He could not let his wife be put in danger too. The scene stalled again. Lucas grew more and more unstable. The knife in his hand nicked my neck. A thin line of blood appeared. "Ah!" Victoria screamed when she saw the blood. She completely lost her mind. "Don't hurt my baby!" she cried and rushed toward Lucas without thinking. "Victoria!" "No!" William panicked. Lucas did not expect her to charge suddenly. Instinctively, he stabbed the knife toward her. I knew he was trying to stab Victoria, but in that split second, a figure moved even faster than she did, stepping in front of her. It was William. He used his own body to block the knife aimed at his wife. A sharp, muffled sound, the blade sank deep into his abdomen. Everyone froze, time seemed to stop. Blood soaked William's white suit, he groaned softly and swayed, but did not fall. He grabbed Lucas's wrist with all his strength, holding the knife tightly. Quick, take Lily, run, he turned his head and roared at the stunned Victoria. Victoria finally snapped back to her senses. She stared at the knife in William's stomach and the blood pouring out, letting out a piercing scream. William! In that moment of chaos, I did something that surprised even myself. I opened my mouth and bit down hard on Lucas's hand covering my mouth. I used every ounce of strength I had. Arg! Lucas screamed in pain and instinctively let go. I slipped out of his arms and ran to Victoria as fast as I could. Mommy! I cried, calling out that title sincerely for the first time. Victoria hugged me tightly, shielding me protectively in her arms. By then, the bodyguards and guests from the party had rushed over after hearing the noise. Lucas knew he had no chance left. He tried to pull out the knife and run, but William, like an enraged lion, held onto him desperately. Finally, the bodyguards swarmed in and subdued Lucas. The danger was over. But William slowly collapsed to the ground. William! Victoria held me and threw herself toward him, crying hysterically. The ambulance arrived quickly. William was carried into the vehicle and rushed to the hospital. The operating room light stayed on for a very long time. Victoria and I waited outside the whole time. She held me tightly, her body shaking non-stop. I could feel her tears falling onto my hair, burning hot. In that moment, all the hatred and resentment in my heart seemed to melt away in those tears. So they really did love me so much that they would give up their lives for me. Fortunately, the surgery was a success. William was out of danger, but he needed to stay in the hospital and recover for a long time. During that period, Victoria and I stayed by his side almost every minute. I began to learn how to care for them, like a real daughter. I fed him, read stories to him, and massaged Victoria's back when she was tired. For the first time, the three of us felt like a real family. On the day he was discharged, the sun was shining brightly. William sat in a wheelchair, and Victoria pushed him. I walked beside them, holding a bouquet of sunflowers, his favorite. When we got home, I placed a photo of the three of us on my nightstand. In the photo, they were holding me, smiling happily, and I was smiling too, genuinely. I knew the pain of the past would not disappear easily. It would remain a permanent scar in my life, but that was okay. Because I had finally found something more important than hatred, love, and home. I chose to forgive them. I chose to let myself go. Because my life was still long, and after every storm, the sun always shines.